Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, please help me welcome Maria Thereese Serrano. Hi, Teraii.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for doing this. Teraii, first of all, when I was reading your resume, which was a mouthful, I felt so sayang that you were out there in the United States. You're not here, uh, building a better Philippines. But I guess forums, interviews like this allow us to still enjoy the benefits of who have you have become, right?
Right. So, but what I did not include there, that's why I said many professions. We're actually working on building a college in
Okay.
Dalaget. And my mom's from Dalaget,
Oh wow. Okay.
Lapay Dalaget. So we're actually working on building on establishing a college
Wow. In
institute
Dalaget.
in Malapay, which we call the Institute for Sustainable Living. So we're going to
Wow.
be teaching watershed management because that area is a watershed area,
Okay.
soil management,
Okay.
and environmental education. So that's my friend Ruel Rigor is doing the work now to do the feasibility studies to work on that. So
Wonderful.
we're
Wonderful.
actually
So
just every year I go home and through that yearly travel home I always try to strengthen my roots. As you say, you get wings, but make sure you have your roots so you're kind of rooted even if you fly high. And we have UP. Remember the UP song Malayo ang marating di rin magbabago ang damdamin.
yeah, yeah, I vaguely remember that, but yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yes.
Anyway, can I call you Teraii? Is that okay?
Yes, totally. That's what my friends call me. So you're
Teraii,
now one of my friends.
one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you because I wanted to listen to a voice of feminism because we are celebrating International Women's Month this entire month of March, and I'd like to listen to
Yes.
a voice who is familiar with the Philippine setting as well as the Western setting of the movement that is feminism. Did I tell us about the beginnings of feminism? Give us a little historical background. Why did we need a feminism movement in the first place, a feminist movement in the first place? What happened, and what is the overarching reason why there is a feminist movement now, not just in the United States, not just here in the Philippines, but all over the world? Tell us the story, please.
Yes, so to be honest, just a disclaimer, I don't know everything,
Of
but
course.
first of all, I think we need to just define the term feminism and its
Yeah.
roots.
Yeah.
Why feminism, or how the term first came
Yeah.
into use. So
Yeah.
feminism is actually refers to the the sort of the fight for or the promotion for women's rights
Okay.
and to have equality with men. So
Mm-hmm.
it means equality with men and promotion for women's rights because throughout history, we know that women are considered properties of men.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you take your husband's name, officially, historically, you're actually becoming a property of your husband. So that's,
Mm-hmm.
or the property of your father. So women actually become properties of men. And that is not as egregious as the actual situation in society where women do not have a voice. Only the man can make decisions in the house, or
Mm-hmm.
the man can make decisions in society. They're the ones who can, run for public office or have properties. So, but that's just that's the general idea. Although I would like to point out that as you were saying earlier, there's the feminism in the Philippines and Western feminism, or feminism in developing country, different from Western feminism
Mm-hmm.
in terms of culture. So for example, I would like to say that before Spanish colonization, women were of kind of equal status with men. Women can own properties. Women can, trade. They can go to the market on their own. They can put their name. Like if you own a property, it can be in your name. They don't have to take their husband's name. They can even, I'm not saying promoting promiscuity or what. If they want to have premarital relations with anyone, they can do that. So so that when the Spaniards came, they thought that the Filipino women were wild. They had to be tamed because women
Wow.
were out and about. Women should be in the homes. Women should be like, doing, sewing, cooking for men. They can't be rulers.
Wow.
If you know in history, there are a few women who are actually rulers.
Hmm.
And you never hear of women who are sort of ruler during the time of the Spaniards, because of course the women were just doing women chores. So you can't really do things that men can do. But during
Wow.
the pre-colonial times,
Wow.
women were actually of equal status with men.
Very
So
interesting.
in terms of social history, if you look at the history of civilization, when when imperial, sort of like, the medieval times, the times of the monarchy, so
Hmm.
patriarchy came into its sort of, for like really form solidly. That's when women sort of became sort of subservient to men. They were
Hmm.
forced to be subservient to men, but it
Hmm.
didn't mean that women were always saying yes.
Hmm.
There were women revolting. There were women who were like Joan of Arc, like those women who, just like got out of the sort of the line, get out of the box, and not want to be told that they can't do things they can't do. Like so many women we know.
That is
So
very
the fact
interesting.
that,
Very, very
yes, the
interesting indeed,
fact,
especially the Philippine history context, because I did not understand where our women's movement came about. But now that you'd mention it, so before the Spaniards came, women were actually of equal footing as men as far as the society goes up. What sort of society was, if you want to probably go back there, or maybe you have information about what sort of society did we have back then, before
we
the
we had
Spaniards
a
came?
we had a baranganic society. So we were kind of, so we were not feudal. So you remember, like, the development of society
Hmm.
from sort of the the baranganic society. We were not, there were small independent kind of tribal units.
Okay.
They were independent, and they were also warring or having alliances with each other. So that's the kind of
Okay.
society we have. We were not a municipal or a provincial. We were not that. We were just
We were
independent
also not a
tribes.
patriarchy back in the pre-colonial era. It was not a patriarchy. Would you say that?
There was probably, yeah, there were, I would say that there was not, the patriarchy wasn't that established. It was sort of
Hmm.
like there was really very strong partnership between men and women, because the women actually give birth,
Okay.
so that they needed the women to kind of
Take care of
also,
it.
not only to take care of the kids, but actually to propagate the tribe, because there's even times when they had to kidnap women so that they
Hmm.
can propagate more in a
Okay.
tribe, because there were
Okay.
barangays. Imagine barangays, like maybe like 100 people,
Wow.
and you need more people in order to be able to plant or to be able to hunt or whatever it is that they're doing to progress, right? So
So the barangay word in itself is
yeah,
actually not a Spanish construct. It is actually takes its roots even before
yes,
the
it is.
Spaniards came.
Yes, it is.
Very
Yeah, the
interesting.
barangay is like from the word balangay, which means a boat.
Wow.
So it refers to the boat. So this is so, because so the thing with this is the thing with based on, I don't know if you remember in the Philippine history books by History of Filipino People, Teodoro Agoncillo.
Yeah, I think I remember that
Yeah.
name
So
at least.
and other works, like, those Philippine history textbook, that we know that the barangays were not very established. So
Hmm.
if the barangay of the dato failed to actually perform his duties, his constituents could move to another barangay and be constituents of another dato.
Wow.
So there's a pressure for the dato to actually be, do the duties. So that's sort of like,
Why did the
well,
Spaniards feel the need to subjugate the women, and why did they feel that they were going about their daily life in a wild and with reckless abandon? Why did they feel that sort of need? I mean, like, was that the kind of society that Spain had, and they wanted to
yes.
build one similar to their motherland? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so we know that when Spain came, they were already a big imperial power, right? So
Hmm.
they were already, conquering different, we have Latin America now, so
Hmm.
different countries, different continents, and killing people, and like owning lands between Portugal and Spain. They were trying to divide the world between themselves, right? So
Hmm.
they were this superpower. They had all, so they were trying to occupy more land. So, but they were already very very established. They were very developed society, but at the same time they were already very feudal.
Hmm.
So that when they first came to the, and remember, there's the religion of Catholicism.
Of course, yeah,
And
Christianity.
in the religion of Catholicism, women are subject to men.
Hmm.
Women, so one of the first documents that they actually distribute to the people was the Doctrina Christiana.
Okay.
The Doctrina Christiana is the Christian doctrine, the document that tells you how you have to behave. A woman cannot be next to a man in a room just by themselves.
Okay.
So these are like, it's things about how they regulate the behavior of women, because the women can cause a man to sin.
Hmm.
If a man thinks of negative thoughts, like sexual thoughts
Hmm.
particularly, it's the sin of
Blame
the
it on the
women.
woman.
Because yeah, just like now, if a woman is raped, it's her fault because she was wearing like these clothes that are she's scantily clad. She's provoking the woman to rape her. It's the woman's fault. So the
So
sort
that
of
that,
like
that document,
the
Doctrina Christiana, was introduced
doctrina.
in the Philippines.
Yes, yes,
That
that's
was one of
the
the first
one
documents
of the
of
first. Yes, they actually they made sure that that one thing is actually distributed. They weren't
wow,
even interested in distributing the Bible.
wow.
They were like distributing that sort of tells the regularly how the different behaviors should be regulated. And when you go to confessions, the Doctrina Christiana, which which I don't know if you have listeners who are Opus Dei, they still have those things, like kind of a guide to kind of reflect whether they have committed sin or not,
Wow.
believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. So but if you look at those things, it's like women are kind of tools of the devil. So temptations, it's like women and drugs and alcohol or whatever, something like that. Women are
It
sort of,
was Eve, a woman who tempted Adam, right?
exactly, kind of that. If you go by that, if you go if you go by that, you don't blame Adam for being too weak to be like tempted by Eve, right? But you blame Eve for being the devil, the temptress.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you blame on the women. So just sort of like those kinds of doctrines that are rooted in religion are still, whether we're religious or not, are very embedded or ingrained in our psyche, in our social psyche, that
Hmm.
it's almost as natural as the sun or gravity, which is not true.
Okay.
And that takes a lot of like re kind of reorientation.
Yeah.
That's why there is the feminist movement, to actually just say basic rights for women. We're not saying
Hmm.
we're better than men. We're saying that if women wants to be pilot, if women want to be scientists, if women want to be what men can do, then they can be.
Okay.
They shouldn't be stopped from doing. If women want to be priests, they should be allowed to be priests, right? How
Hmm.
come women are not allowed to be priests? Because in the Doctrina Christiana, women are the tools of the devil. So that is
Okay.
totally flawed. But
Okay.
let's not go there, right? Let's just go to the basic rights of women in society. And I would like to think that until now, like in the US, okay, this is the US, a very developed, you would say, a lot of countries would want to be the US. But comparing the salaries of women and men for the same position, for example, a scientist, same level, same kind of job, women's salaries are often lower than the men. The same categories, same number of years, same jobs, same description, same everything. Women often are lower than men. They just Princeton just paid like maybe hundreds of millions of dollars to the teachers, because they found out that the faculty in Princeton University, this is very recent, like last year or maybe 2 years ago, the faculty in Princeton University, the women were receiving lower than their men. So, I mean, this is like 2020, 20 whatever, 2018, right? You have these issues, and if people need to fight for this, like really strongly fight for this, that means society is not equal. And if we are having these problems of inequality in the highest echelons of society, like the Princeton University, where the ideals of what the best society should be are practiced, imagine in places where there's less education and what prevails are ideas of the old. Like women are, women, you have to listen to submit to your husband. For a long time, I stopped going to church.
Mhm.
When they say that thing, it just like blows my mind. I couldn't take it. I mean, I can't be. When I got married, I didn't take my husband's name. I still
Okay.
had my name. I never
Okay.
changed my name.
Okay. You know what? I was researching on the subject matter, and I was trying to figure out what the other views are about feminism and about women's rights, and I came across a interesting thought, an interesting conversation that I was listening through YouTube from Jordan Peterson. I may probably I'm misquoting him, but the essence of what he said was uh, society rewards competence. Society rewards competence irregardless of gender. What do you have to say to that?
Well, just just exhibit number one, Princeton
Okay.
University faculty,
Okay.
same exact thing. Like I said, you can
Same
Google it
competence.
anytime. They had to pay, the university had to pay the faculty because I think it's the Department of Labor or something that found out that the female faculty were not paid as much as the men on the same job,
Okay.
on the same competence level.
So
And it's
why
not
would
true.
a Princeton
And there's so
University
many cases.
educator? Why
So
would
there's so
you?
many cases that actually would I would say they would debunk that notion. It's not true. Otherwise, there would be no cases filed at the Department of Labor.
But I'm curious, why would a competent woman from Princeton University who's an educator, why would he let that happen? She let that happen in the first place?
So because this is the thing, you don't really know how much your other faculty members are actually getting.
Ah, okay, all right.
So it's not like, in the Philippines you have like standard whatever, like you have levels.
Yeah.
So when you get hired, for example, oh, we're gonna hire you, Jiggy, on this
Mhm.
and that, you will get this X amount of money. Now, if
Yeah.
you look at the study, because these are actually public documents, then you can do that. But you're
Okay.
not normally going to tell people your salary is not really going to be made public.
Was it even an issue to them how much they're getting compared to their male counterparts?
It is an issue. That's how there was a complaint because somebody found out and they filed a complaint to the Department of Labor, and that's how they figure out that it's true.
Does it have anything to do with the fact that women have to take a long sabbaticals, especially when they get pregnant and have to conceive? Uh, d- does the fact that there are days that they can't work because of that factor in the discrepancy?
So that's another point that actually needs to be discussed because
Mhm.
it's true, they take that against women.
Yeah.
And that should not be that should not actually affect competence. And
Okay.
women should not be punished for something biological, for giving birth to their children.
Okay.
They shouldn't be. This the sabbatical actually is uniform as far as I think male or female is concerned. It's just like a lot of to be actually, you would be shocked to know that not all universities in the United States actually grant maternity leaves.
Wow.
Many universities actually have their professors time their pregnancy in the summer or when they're not teaching because
Time
there's
their
no.
pregnancy.
It is true. It is true. They literally
Wow.
have to time it that they give birth because there are no maternity leaves. And to point out that this is like a totally backward society is when you
Hmm.
go to Scandinavia, and women and men. So the wives, pregnant women, and their husbands, after they give birth, they have 14 months of paid maternity and paternity leaves. They have to
Did you,
share it.
did you say 14 months?
14 months.
Not days.
14 months.
Wow.
14 months. We were in Sweden. We were in Sweden. I like totally interviewed so many people because I was just blown by this. My son, John Carlos, was like 6 or 7 at the time. I interviewed so many people, and everybody say the same thing, and they're like, "Yeah, it's 14 months, so it's like you really have to take it." So if your husband takes only 6 months, you take 8 months. So the two of you, between the two of you, has to be 14 months of paid, and you don't lose your job. You have security of your job.
Wow.
In the U.S., if you get pregnant, you're gonna get fired.
Wow. In
So
2021.
I don't know 2021 because 2020 like totally f up a lot of things. So maybe
Yeah,
the
yeah.
US is worse, but in Scandinavia, what I'm trying to say here is that in if you look at the different societies, other societies are more equal in terms of women and men, while in the US it's not. So there are places that you can say that it is actually possible that women and men can have equal rights because that's what's happening in many other developed countries. We're not
Well,
talking about less
the
developed
way
countries.
laws are crafted there in the United States is kind of different from the way laws are crafted here in the Philippines, right? I think every state they have their own sort of laws, right? That's unique to the state. Maybe you're referring to just certain kinds of certain states in the United States. Maybe there are other states that treat women better than other states. Would you be able to say that, or you think it's across the board?
It's across the board. Although you're right about there are certain states that are more liberal, more tend to be more democratic. The
Mm-hmm.
more democratic a state is, the more they tend to have better treatment of women and men.
Mm-hmm.
So like like blue states we call them,
Yeah.
like New York, California,
Yeah.
and those states. So the more conservative the states are, where women were very religious, they tend to have actually lesser
But
lesser regard for women.
Isn't Princeton University and the universities in the United States the more liberal
Yes,
side of the United States? Why would a university like Princeton have that problem? I'm curious what happened there.
that's a good question. We should ask Princeton University because it's an Ivy League.
Exactly.
And to be honest about it, I'm pretty sure there are other universities as well that are practicing, except that until probably now they're still just investigating because you need to get the facts. This is not something that
I'm curious about what the figures are here in the Philippines when it comes to salary equality
right.
between genders. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that, because I surely don't know
So
any
I
any
don't have the
statistic.
exact figures, but I'm pretty sure nothing has changed so much since I left.
Okay.
And just talking about friends, I think it's the same thing.
Okay.
And in most cases, although it's true that women can be in a lot of big positions like become regional directors and stuff like that, but it's usually still men. and it's the same. It's basically the same thing. So this is two things. It's so there are probably women in the position, right? But it's another thing if that woman is actually conscious that she has the responsibility to advance the rights of women, to have more women composition in the agency, for example, where she's working in.
Okay.
Because if you only have a majority of men in the top position, that means it's just men making decisions without consideration of women. Like women should have this maternity leave, women will have childcare issues, women will have helper issues. I don't know if you're married, but you know
Mhm.
how it is if you don't have a helper. In the US, imagine we cannot afford helper. We have to do the cooking, the cleaning, on top of things we do at work.
Mhm.
In the Philippines, at least I'm always envious of my friends there because they have like helpers, right? Or when I go to the Philippines, I can always find someone to help me. But but think about if you're having problems with that in the Philippines, in the US, women are doubly burdened. And in fact, there's a study that said during the pandemic, most women, there's like more women compared to men have to leave their jobs so that they can take care of families.
The
So
other side of this women versus men argument, if you want to call it that, is there are also injustices to men. There are also terrible things that happen to men. For example, mostly men die of war. Mostly men die in the workplace. It's mostly men who commit suicide and are successful at it. It's mostly men who lose custody battles for their children. So there are also inequalities and injustices uh, against men in the scheme of things. What do you have to say about that?
So first, I would like to correct you on the issue of feminism as a war between men and women. It is not
Okay.
a war between men and women. Like I said from the very beginning, feminism is about asserting women's rights to have the same rights as men. So
Okay.
when you're fighting for women's right, it is not like men losing the rights because women are getting this right. It is not a piece of cake. If
Okay.
women wants to have their cake, you get less of your cake.
Okay.
Rights is a basic human right. It is free for all. It's everybody has, it is enough for everyone to have rights. As long as you're living, you have every right, and your
Okay.
exercise of your right doesn't make you lose less of your rights, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why when you say women's right, it doesn't mean that it's a fight, a war against men. Now we're
Okay.
talking about, it's true, there are actually abuses, in fact rape against men. There are
Mm-hmm.
those cases, but 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 two things. One is this if you talk about abuses against men or situation against men, it is more of, I don't know what the statistics are, but usually it's not as much as happened to women.
Mm-hmm.
Now, talking about war, I like that you pointed out war, because
Mm-hmm.
war is a decision made by men. To be
Okay.
honest, if you look at governments, if women run governments, there would be
Uh-huh.
no war. Women wouldn't want war, because war is actually, talking about coming from the US, which is a military industrial complex, is actually a business, because you're feeding the military industries. That's why it's easy to get men. It's easy to get wage war, because these industries that are making all the weapons are creating business. And who are the people in government? They're men.
But I'd like to point out Margaret Thatcher and Hillary Clinton. These personalities, these women, are actually war hawks.
So yeah, yes. So that's good. You pointed it out. That's what I said. It doesn't mean that just because there are women
Mm-hmm.
in the position that they are going to advance women's issues, because
Okay.
there are women who are actually gotten in the sort of, the patriarchal sort of societal orientation, that they
Mm-hmm.
decide like men, they think like men, so they do not necessarily represent women. So if you
Mm-hmm.
ask me, I would never vote for Hillary Clinton, because
Okay.
she's one of those men.
Okay.
I would never vote for Margaret Thatcher, because she's one of those men. She does
Okay.
not represent me as a woman trying to advance the rights of women to have equal rights with men. You know what I'm saying? So they misrepresent women, and they give the women in government a bad name.
But of course, the optics of a woman president is of something to behold, right? To be able to see
Yeah.
just a woman president, which you haven't seen yet in the United States. We've seen twice already here in the
Yeah.
Philippines. Is perhaps a good enough start, right? So,
Right, right.
why do you think it took that it took so long for you guys to have a female vice president and never had a female president? What do you think is going on in United States society? What's happening there?
So so the thing is that, to be honest, the US is still a very patriarchal society. They cannot take a woman being president. I mean, come on. Like women, they're like women. They to be honest, they're, so that's why we were talking about, we, third world countries are more advanced. They're more liberal than
Hmm.
developed countries. So I took a class at Yale called the Social Science of Development, and my professor is Professor Carol Carpenter. She was head of the U.S. aid to Africa.
Okay.
So she worked with African women for years. And she told me that she realized that her being an American, she went there to, she said, with the notion that I'm going to liberate women, right? Teach them about feminism, to teach them about freedom, to be able to liberate themselves. When she
Hmm.
went there, she realized that the African women had more freedom, had more ability to make decisions for themselves than
Wow.
she as an American woman. Because these women, because the thing was that, so she has anecdotes like these women, because the government doesn't really care for them, they're left on their own, so they could, so there are regulations in Africa, for example, that men can go to certain areas for some reason, like tribal wars, whatever, but women, they can go anywhere. So because government doesn't care for them wherever they go anywhere, they're the ones who are able to like gather firewood, to get fruits, to get water. So they're actually able to become more. If you monetize those contribution to the family economics, they're contributing more than the men because the men's movements are so limited by government regulation. But the women can do a lot of things. So she was saying like how our notion of what feminism should be. We think that, oh, first world women should have a responsibility to make third world women be more feminist.
Hmm.
But the thing is, there are instances where third world women are actually more able to exercise their rights to self-determination. You know what self-determination is? Making decisions for your day-to-day life. It's not just like who is the president, like where are you gonna go today? Can you go to this place? Can you wear whatever you want to do? Can you cook these things? So those basic things that she said, as an American woman, I feel more deprived than this women. So she was to me enlightening in terms of like my experience working in communities in the Philippines, because it looked like for me more the although life with working class women, especially urban poor women, or farmers wives women, or farming women, or fisher, in the fishing communities, it's more difficult, but they have more ability to be what they want than when you're, say, a middle class woman, because there's a lot of limitations of what you're supposed to do. But the more important thing here is that we should not lose sight of the fact that the reason why we want to advance women's rights is so they can get the education that's also available to men, although argue education so they can be nurses and earn better than men. Like before, like they prefer women getting education because they're more studious and they can be then to be more successful. But generally, in terms of like you have to be an engineer, you can't be like, oh, you can't be an engineer, you're a woman. It's
You
only
know,
recently actually that
I
they
spoke
kind
to
of
I spoke to a
entertain
woman
or
life coach uh, earlier this week, and she
right.
mentioned that women are different. Their energies come from different sources. The woman comes from the heart, and the man comes from the lower regions. And physiologically, we are not the same. Women and men are not the same. So there is really a
I
difference
don't know how
there.
scientific that is.
No, but what I'm saying is
I don't think that's scientific at all.
physically. So you think whatever a man can do, a woman can do? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, so this is the thing. You cannot put it like one on one, right? So what I'm saying is like if a man can be an engineer, a woman can be an engineer,
Yeah, but
right?
I'm talking about maybe
Physiologically, you
physical
can't get.
things.
Yeah. So you can't. So it is kind of ridiculous to reduce the whole discussion to, can a woman carry a 400-pound rock when a
Hmm.
man can carry a 400-pound rock? That's
Yeah.
not the point. The
Okay.
point is whether you're letting a woman carry a rock that she can carry, and a man, just like a man can carry whatever kind of rock he wants to carry. It's not like 400 to 400. It's not a one-on-one thing. It's about if you're letting the woman carry a rock. Unfortunately, society does not let a woman carry a rock. But going back to the point of the energy coming from what region, I mean, like if you studied the physiology of the body, everything comes from the mind, right?
Okay.
I
Okay.
love you with all my heart is wrong. The
Hmm.
truth is, I love you with all my hypothalamus. It's all in the
Okay.
brain,
Okay.
and all the neurotransmitter runs in the spine and tells you. So a lot
What to
of
do?
things come in the mind. If you are oriented that as a woman you're weak, you cannot be an engineer. You cannot do this thing because you're not a man. Then that is already in your brain.
Hmm.
So I'm looking at science. I mean, there's all this BS about, oh, this woman comes from Venus, man comes from Mars. I mean, no, because if you look at societies that are really advanced, how come they're able to do it? They don't believe in all those BS. They just believe that if you give equal access to people, then if they want to carry a rock, they can carry a rock. If they want to carry wood, they can carry wood. If they want to fly, they can fly.
One of the things that she said, why, because I asked her what her stand was on feminism, and she said she quit becoming a feminist because this is her own words. So she said that we have raised a generation of emasculated men. And what do you have to say about that?
So first of all, I don't know how she described feminism. How did she
Okay.
describe feminism?
Well, I'll have to dig deep and go back to
Because
the
I
episode.
can't, I can't, to be honest, I don't understand. I don't understand how she's describing feminism, because then if she's describing it wrong, then that's how she's gotten it wrong. Like
So,
what I said, that idea of emasculated man is from the idea that women are dominatrix and emasculating men. So that
okay,
is a total wrong beginning. So
okay.
then if you proceed from that, that's wrong. And what's the evidence that men are emasculated? You have all these men like Trump. He's not
Hmm.
emasculated at all. You have all these men like Mitch McConnell, Ted fucking Cruz. I mean, sorry, but
It's all right.
it's these men are not emasculated. You
Okay.
saw January 6th. These men
Yeah.
are not emasculated. Look at
Yeah.
all those proud boys.
Yeah.
These men are not emasculated.
Okay.
Come on. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know how she described it, but like I said from the very beginning, if you don't understand what feminism is, you tend to actually equate it with women domination, and therefore you would be so against it.
So, what do you have to say who think like that? That the feminist
I think,
movement is about the women ruling the world? Because we have so much evidence that women can actually rule the world. With this pandemic, for example, the Prime Minister of New Zealand is one of the most successful countries in the world in their reaction to the pandemic. Arden, right? She's
yes,
very famous for what she did in New Zealand, and many more other examples of women who are succeeding more, are more successful in their countries in curbing the pandemic. What do you have to tell them? What do you have to say to those people that think like that the women's movement, the feminist movement, is about women ruling the world?
so yeah, so thank you for pointing out like the situation. I mean, like how women rulers in the world, currently
Hmm.
president and women, heads of state are actually effectively able to, deal with the pandemic more effectively than say particularly the United States of America, the most powerful country supposedly in the entire world, right?
Hmm.
So, but we were so lame. Anyway, I think the thing would be to actually just educate yourself and read what the word feminism is, and not, the problem is like we just immediately go to things that, so this is what the study is all about. There are two things in life that we hold dear: the things we believe in and the things we don't believe in, right? So the things we believe in, we tend to read things that aligns with what we believe
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
and the things that we don't believe in, we don't read them.
Hmm.
So that's the problem. If we don't
Confirmation
have an
bias,
open
right?
mind, yeah, exactly, confirmation bias. So if we don't have an open mind, then we cannot educate ourselves. We are like constantly in the tunnel. If we just open our mind and say, why are these people fighting for this? I mean, there must be something going on. Why are women like, why is there no US American president? And like Kamala Harris, for example, she is like a total kind of, I mean, so Kamala Harris, she's not white and she's a woman. So this have like patriarchy and white supremacy. They are intricately like related. If you're patriarchal, you tend to be white supremacist if you're in the US. Imagine
Okay.
having a woman who is not white become vice president, and they have this conspiracy theory that in a few months Biden will fall and Kamala Harris be president. What in the world? A non-white woman president of the United States? That's why the January 6th happened. So because they can't deal with it.
Yeah.
So if this if you come to think of it, why are these people in like doing these things? There's something going on here, and but the thing is, we need to really educate ourselves about this, and people sometimes who are, you were saying from the standpoint, if people tend to have better in life, they just think that there's the situation of everybody. But what about those people who have less, like people who are not receiving even the minimum wage, who are mothers, single mothers, a lot of single mothers in the US, fending for their own, and unlike in the Philippines, there's so much there's no family, there's no caring. It's so crazy. So who will fight for these women? So there has to be a government, or there has to be like there has to be something that would make sure that everything is provided for all, regardless of gender or regardless of sex, wherever you want to put out.
It's pretty
I
interesting
mean,
that you
it's
mentioned
not just
it.
for women and men, but transgenders as well.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that the names that I threw
Yes.
out
So
earlier,
sorry.
Hillary Clinton and Margaret Thatcher, and maybe here in the Philippines, Corazon Aquino and Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. You mentioned that most of these women, although they are women, they're actually acting like men and very good at it, right? That's
Yes.
why they probably ascended into power. Would you say that? Would you be able to say
Yes,
that?
even Corazon Aquino. I remember Corazon Aquino actually implemented total war policy. Talking
Okay.
about war, she
Mm-hmm.
acted like a man. Like, she killed a lot of people. You're talking about drug war now.
Mm.
People are like, all these people who are sort of liberal.
Mm.
Like, where were they during Corazon Aquino's total war policy? You know
Mm.
how many people were killed during total war policy?
Mm.
It's crazy,
Mm.
but nobody mentions that. And then
Yeah.
you have Macapagal Arroyo. She was like acting like a man.
So I'm curious because politics and society, especially politics, is mostly dominated by men, right? So and the structure that the patriarchal society structure that we have is in place. How do you think a woman can change that structure? Does she need to change the entire structure of, let's say, politics or
Yes.
society in
So
general, or
yeah.
she can work with what we have now and make it better? How does it work? Do we start from
So
scratch?
yeah. So I would like, I don't know if you know AOC. You
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
know
of course,
AOC.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. AOC, yeah, of course, pretty
Yeah. So
loud
Alexandra
voice.
Ocasio Cortez,
Yeah.
Priscilla, and the squad, right? These are all
Mm.
women.
Yeah.
But these women are the face of a movement. They
Okay.
are not just there. It's they're they're becoming in power. They're being elected into power was not their own like individual achievement. It's a
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of movement, and they're changing US politics radically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that I'm hoping would happen in the Philippines. There's a mass movement. Actually, you would say to some extent we're working within the system, because we're working within the system of electoral politics, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the way to get elected is very radical. They did rely on big corporations to fund their campaigns. They're doing grassroots campaign. Every single one person can donate, and so you are actually everyone in the
It's
community
stake. Yeah.
contributing. So they're trying to get rid of, because the problem is, if you have big companies like what happened to President Duterte, big companies actually supported him so that when he became president, he's beholden to all these powers.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with anyone in politics who's being supported by big corporations will eventually be beholden
So,
to the.
what are you suggesting? So that's the structure that we have now, not just in the Philippines, but in the United States and
Yes.
perhaps many countries all over the world. So how can women change that? I mean,
Yeah, so we
that's still
have to
the.
have like a mass movement, like what AOC and her squad has started, like the really grassroots movement, electing more women, electing more effective, educated, like women who are coming from the working class, not middle class, but from the people you want to represent.
Mhm.
If you want to represent people from the urban poor, you have someone from the urban poor communities or from the farmer communities. That's the real thing. You don't have to have party list. You should have these actual people like AOC and all these ordinary people in government. And that's the structure we have. We're working within the system, but we are not working within like the same process that got them into power. Everyone has to work, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
know.
lot of hard, tedious work.
Yeah. Teraii, is the feminist movement in the United States, say, for example, the same as the feminist movement here in the Philippines? And if not, what are the key differences? Where did we get our feminist movement, our feminism fervor here in the Philippines? Did we get it from the West, or did it start here in the Philippines before or after the feminist movement in the United States, or did this come to being globally? I want to try to understand where it all started in the United States and the Philippines.
So the feminist movement in the Philippines actually started with the left. So there are two things. So there's so many things at the same time happening. There's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
the only one thing, right? Because you have professors reading materials from the West and the
yeah,
feminist
exactly.
movement in the
Yeah, yeah.
60s. And then you have what was going on in the 60s. There was like a very big radical movement of the left.
Mm-hmm.
You have the establishment of the Communist Party in the Philippines, the New People's Army, and then was this big left movement. And then suddenly there was martial law. So there was this strong anti-dictatorship movement that sort of attracted a lot of people in the left. And there was actually a surge of the idea of women being equal to men was just something like so refreshing because it never happened before. But it does not mean that there were no movements locally. There were movements locally, but it sort of reached a boiling point. It sort of became viral. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone doing their own thing, and then suddenly it became viral in the 70s. But one of the things that consolidated them is media, scholarship, and the anti-war in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So there were so many things that sort of the media is really important. Like we have Facebook now or TikTok or whatever it is that sort of spread the ideas, right? Like, whether it's fake news or what, but at the time, this is how the news spread. So there was the global influence and there was the local with whatever was going on locally, especially with the labor movement, because there were already women who were know that, they know that they were not actually getting the same benefits or the same salary as men. I don't know if you're familiar with RBG, but Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Yeah, yeah. The Supreme Court
yeah,
justice who died recently,
yeah,
right?
she died. She's one of her like landmark laws actually is or landmark decision is actually making sure that women are paid the same as men, and that is still being implemented now. Can you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
We're still trying to slowly get that implemented,
How
and
long
that's
ago
how
was
like
this when she signed that into law,
well,
Ginsburg?
it's sort of a decision that's in the Supreme Court. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like I think it was the 80s,
Wow.
maybe.
So it's
Yeah,
still
I
being
mean,
implemented now. It hasn't been fully implemented.
it's not. Yeah, it's. I could be wrong, but I think it's like in the 80s. I was just reading her biography like months ago, so I've totally forgotten the dates, but sort of like very recent. It's like it's a recent history, and we're still working on it. But
Can you give us a
but
can you give us an example, Tere, of a matriarchal society that is successful? Can you give us a female leader that's not acting like a man and is successful at what she's doing?
I can't really say this, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Chinese,
Yeah, of
who's
course. Yeah.
the dowagers. Like there was to be honest, my son taught me this because
Okay.
he used to a lot of extra credits history.
Okay.
And there's a history in China where there was a woman who actually she wasn't really emperor, but she kind of run the whole trading, and
Okay.
it was like so she became sort of the ruler because she was sort of in charge of all the trading.
Okay.
And I think that was the situation where the whole she was able to run it really efficiently. And this is a woman. But I think you probably heard of the dowager were so good at when the women, the women leaders.
Okay.
And I can't really tell more details, but and I don't really know if they're not acting like men, because it's like what is really to act like men in a negative way or in a
Mm.
positive way, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we're the same. Men and women are the same, except like
Mm.
there's just a few things that are different from us, right? So can we say that you're acting as a woman exclusively? No, you can't. I'm a woman. I could be acting like a man, but when we're talking about acting like a man in a patriarchal way,
Mm.
is when you promote the idea that women are superior to women, men are superior to women. I'm saying, even if you're a woman, for example, if I'm a woman, I would say I cannot hire this woman because, to be honest, she's a woman and I'm a woman making this decision. So that means I'm actually promoting the patriarchal view.
Hmm.
So you know what I'm saying? I mean, in
Yeah.
that way, I'm acting like the man with the patriarchal views. But if I say, we have to give her a chance and see, train them and see who gets to show that they're competent. We have to like let train all these men and women and see who gets the job done, and then we decide.
So,
So that's
so I have a thought experiment for you, Teraii. Let's say, granting, for example, we live in a matriarchal society in the Philippines and the United States, for example. So most of the women rule the land. What kind of society do you think that is? What kind of structures
oh, I
do
would
we have?
love
What
that
kind of
because
hierarchical structures do you think? Because people are saying that men like order. They like structure. That's what like the DNA, if you want to call it that, of a man. And women have a different sort of outlook. What maybe you can describe to us in this thought
okay,
experiment?
I,
What
I
kind of
I'll not
society would
give
that
you.
be?
I will not give you a hypothetical example. I will give
Okay,
you New Zealand, as you mentioned.
okay,
New
okay.
Zealand.
Uh-huh.
It's run by a woman, and
Okay.
look how New Zealand is right now. Actually, I want to move to New Zealand just because I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing.
Okay.
Like all the things she's done,
Okay.
and so I mean that's just the way it is. I mean that's why I'm saying, let's look at actual evidence because
Okay.
we have to stop thinking of what if. Let's look at actually situations that's happened
Okay. All
to
right.
prove that if your men women can actually run a country, run it properly. Although they would say, well, New Zealand is not really a big country.
Hmm.
Well, look at Germany,
Hmm.
Angela Merkel,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I mean, it's a tough situation. If it's a tough place to be, this is the pandemic. You have Angela Merkel. There was a time when there were all the women leaders, and there was an evaluation that women leaders of the different countries were actually performing better than men leaders during the
Okay.
pandemic. I think
So
that's
you,
what you were mentioning
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So you don't believe that men are from Mars or women are from Venus. You
No, I
don't
don't.
think that we have
That's not scientific. That's just
yeah.
sorry. That's just like some new age BS.
Okay. So you believe that all men and women are created equal in many ways, right?
Yes, so this is the thing. We can be depending. So we all have different genetic stuff, right? But
Yeah.
our competencies, our weaknesses, are are determined by our genetic stuff.
Mm,
It's not
mm.
because of our sex.
Okay.
And I believe that if men and women are given the same access to resources, the same opportunities, I think that's just starting point there. If
Hmm.
some men can excel, some women excel, it's because of their own genetic, your individual genetic, whatever it is, right?
Not because you're a
And
woman, not because you're a
not
man.
because you're a woman, but because there's this level playing field. The playing field is level. And like I've said, if you look at the different in Scandinavia, if you look at many countries in Europe, you can see that there's actually a lot of people who are able to show that it's true. I mean, unlike in the US, there's a lot of games that no men can do that, no women can do that. No, no. What if a woman wants to play basketball? No, they can only play hoops or whatever it is they call in the UK. They cannot play basketball. But of course, you're like, well, there's the in University of Connecticut. I'm in Connecticut. There's this women's basketball team that are really good, but you cannot make them be like, but do they play like the men's basketball? Of course, they can play like the men's basketball. They're different physically, like you were saying. But
Mm.
the question is, are you letting women play basketball?
That's the most important
Right?
part. Whether they're
Yeah.
better at it with men, compared to men, rather, is another story. But I guess
Yeah.
important jobs like ruling a country, men and women can probably do
Yes.
a similar, if not a better job than each other, depending on the individual, right?
Yes.
Not just
So like
of the
New Zealand,
gender.
like you just mentioned New Zealand, Angela Merkel. So we have shown how, it's individuals.
Okay,
So the
so
point is just to make sure it's access to resources, opportunities are equally given to level the playing field.
Okay, so I guess in a way, what Jordan Peterson said was competence is the main force that for example rewards people society reward the society rewards people. So I guess educating, giving women and men equal access to education will probably help elevate the status of the women, right?
Right, yeah. So let's just say I have friends in the science at Yale, right? So they're saying that a lot of the grants are not given to women. So between women and men, there are more grants. If you apply for a grant to do experiments,
Yeah.
they're saying that grants are given more to men than to women. You know why? But like because of what you said, women tend to have kids and they tend
Hmm.
to like, like do this and take maternity leaves. And so that is used against them. You think it's fair?
But see,
It's
the thing
not
is that that's
fair.
that's also a choice, right? Having children is also a choice.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be used against them. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be used like, okay, I'm not gonna give you because you're a woman. Even if you did not make the choice now, they just preempt that you're a woman, you tend to get married and you have kids. So let's just make the decision now not to invest money on you because you're a woman. Let's just make the investment on men because this man, even if he's married, he can stay at work and let his wife have kids, take care of the children, take care of everything in the house. But women can't do that.
So how do you
That's
address that basic difference of men and women? That women give birth and men do not give birth. How do you craft a law that is equal? Because physiologically, biologically, we are
it
not
has to
equal
be just common
like that,
sense
right?
that like it has to be just common sense that research grants should be given to people who can actually who can actually perform.
Okay.
It shouldn't be based on sex. Even preempting, like you were saying, even if I say, I promise I'm not going to get married. No,
Okay.
you're a woman. They make the decision that you're a woman. You tend to get married and maybe get pregnant and have kids. We're not gonna give it to you because there's a man.
Mm-hmm.
That's the usual thing, and that is very wrong. That is very unfair because the resources should be given to all who are competent. And they have shown that like in like the research, Madame Curie, even Einstein, women are actually very very part of it. I don't know if you know the history of Madame Curie. Like she
Yeah, yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
going to be part of it because she's a woman, right?
Mm.
They were not going to make her part of it because you can't be a woman and like present, but she's like, no, she's not having it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just an example of like how the thing in the mind determines all the other things in the future. Even if
Yeah, yeah,
it's so back in time, we're still actually influenced by that.
yeah. You know what? One of the things that happens in, for example, a pregnancy is women are also prone to depression, right? Postpartum depression and all that stuff, and men don't have that similar a problem. So for let's just say let's talk about that grant that you were talking about. So the possibility of that happening to the person doing the grant exists. That she might get depressed and probably potentially ruin her work if that indeed happens.
But there are also men who actually get depressed even if they're not pregnant, and there's
Okay.
actually higher percentage of men getting depressed in the US and committing suicide than women.
Okay, exactly. There is a statistic,
So
like I said earlier
yes,
in the beginning, right? That
yeah,
men are
men,
actually more successful at suicide, at killing themselves.
yeah, they have more. So that's a totally wrong notion to like
Yeah,
say I'm not
yeah,
going to give you the grant because women. So what I'm saying is that you have to look at the actual evidence.
yeah. Okay.
You cannot make the decision based on men or whatever. You have to see if this person has done the job, track record, and you should not make the decision to not give the grant to a woman because you are going to you're preempting that eventually she's going to get married and then have kids and then maybe have postpartum depression because that is just so effing stupid.
Because men are also prone to depression,
Exactly,
right?
they can also get depressed in the US because men tend to bottle their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And the psycho this is evidence show that men tend to bottle their emotions. They don't express it, they
Mm-hmm.
internalize it, and so that's why there's a higher incidence of men committing suicide because they don't usually express their whatever it is that's bothering them.
Hmm.
So I mean, of
That's
course,
not an issue. Physiologically, men and women should be created equal, especially when it comes to endeavors of the mind, because uh, the thing that is perceived as a disadvantage to employers, for example, women getting pregnant, is actually not a hindrance for them to succeed in whatever endeavors that
it's
they've been
true.
assigned and whatever task they have been assigned to do. Teraii, you know what? We could talk all day, all night about this
Yes,
issue,
yes.
and we're not gonna see the end of this because this is a very interesting topic. But I know you have stuff to do. I have stuff to do as well,
Yeah.
and I'm sure people can't watch a you know a 2 hour or a 10 hour interview. It's just too complicated and too nuanced, right? I mean, every single issue. That's why I love this format because we can talk about an issue exhaustively, but not exhaustively enough. But at least we were able to talk about it with some depth. Teraii, tell us what is your message to all the feminists out there as we celebrate uh, International Women's Month here in the Philippines? What is your message to all of them? Go ahead.
So actually, so my message is, first of all, like, yeah, more power to women who are fighting to advance women's rights, and we always have to be also take it upon ourselves to, take the obligation to explain what we are fighting for. That we are
Hmm.
not for the domination of women over men,
Okay. Okay.
but we are for equal rights with men, and that when we say we are fighting for our rights doesn't mean that it means less rights for men. So it's just like leveling the playing field, and we are not more superior than men, but we just want, the same thing that is given to men, and in fact, more of what, human beings should have, not just, what we have now. We can have more.
Uh, I'm curious, what sort of literature, what sort of books do you recommend for those who would like to get more into the movement? Would you like to
Oh my
suggest any
God.
particular books? What have you been
Right.
reading aside from
So
the Ginsburg book?
actually, it's good to actually read Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Yeah.
her memoir, so you can actually see, how she's struggling with her own, like, fighting for to be a Supreme Court justice, because it was a struggle so much at her time. But I think just reading what's going on in Philippine history, and looking at, so what I'm saying is that it's important to learn our local history
Mhm.
and see, like, Teodoro Agoncillo, and see the context of our people's struggle, and see how the women are actually working, because then when you look at literature of feminism, whatever it is, you can put context to it. So you can read about, you can I'm losing, I'm forgetting her name, but this feminist who's she's American. She's just written this memoir on the road, and I'm actually, I read her like a month ago. I forgot her. She's very famous, but On the Road is
Maybe
her
you can
memoir, and
message
she's
me her
telling
name
about
and her
how,
book. Maybe
yes,
you can message that to me
yes,
and I
I
can.
will do that. And then I read
Mhm.
Angela Davis's struggles for freedom and
Mhm.
feminism. I read Audre Lorde, and so in the Philippines, I know this might not be accessible, but you can read about, there's a lot of literature from Saint Scholastica, sister. Oh my God, she's my I would say I have my feminist ideas were actually um formed by her.
By a nun,
Sister,
by a sister.
yeah, she's a nun.
Wow,
Interestingly, she's a nun.
that's a very
So
patriarchal organization, right? The
I
church, right?
know yeah, she's a feminist. Saint Scholastica, if they would look at Saint Scholastica, like feminist women's study center, the literature in the women's study center at UP or Saint Scholastica, I'm just really like forgetting her name right now. I'm so much with Tylenol and I leave, and yeah, memory is really,
You
so
can still give me the name of the
I will
sister
I
as well.
will
I
I
can
will
include that in the post. Yeah.
yeah, so these are really accessible, because Saint Scholastica, the text from there, I would say she really, whatever feminism I have now, it's rooted from that,
Wow.
from
Wow.
I took, so under Professor Rodora Bukoy. So Professor Rodora Bukoy, she was the chair of the Filipino Women's Commission. She was professor at UP when I was a student.
Yeah, I was
So
under
she
her, I
was
think. Yeah.
one of my mentors, and so she Sister Manansan.
Okay.
Sister Manansan. That's her. Her literature, her writings, like literally formed my feminist understanding. Like in the Philippines, the feminism is different from first world because there's like three layers. One is the economic, and then there's being a woman, and then I think being like in a colonized country or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, but Sister Manansan is really basic. But I will message you all the basic things that can be basic.
Teraii, if they want to know more about Maria Thereese Serana, or Teraii, as your friends call you, and now I have the pleasure of calling you as well, where should they go on the social media platforms? Can they have a little chat with you on Facebook or
Sure, yeah,
Instagram
yeah,
or
totally.
Twitter or TikTok or whatever?
No, I am only on Facebook. I'm still working on my Twitter.
So what is
Thank you
that?
for having me. It's such a pleasure. I'm so honored.
What is your Facebook page? And
This I'm just Teraii. Teraii, the
uh,
one that I'm messaging you with. That's just
okay,
my Facebook
if you don't mind,
Facebook.
I'll include that in the post as well.
Okay.
And
All right. Thank you so much.
what is your message to all the Cebuanos, especially those that are part of the school that you're building in Carmen, right? Is that what you said, Carmen?
No, no, it's Dalaget. It's
Dalaget,
Malapay
yeah.
Dalaget.
Tell us about what is your message to all of them. They're probably will be able to watch this video right now in Dalaget. Go ahead.
Oh, I hope they would be. So I think first of all, I just you hang on, stay strong, Cebuanos, and we should not think of our rights, women's rights, like advancing our rights, exercising our rights only in March, but every day, and we have to do it in a civilized way. We should remember not to be dominant, but thinking of equality and be nice to our husbands and our brothers.
By the way,
And I think it's just about like how community. I think Cebuanos are talking about.
by the way,
Yeah,
before you
so
go, I
I,
have to
I, I
ask you
think
this question.
Cebuanos are really strong.
I have to ask you this question: how can men help in the feminist movement? Can how important is the role of men in this movement?
Yes, it's really important. Sister Manansan actually pointed that out, that a man can be feminist by actually allowing women, recognizing that women can also, have the same rights as them, because it's
Yeah.
it's a new concept for a lot of men that women can actually have the same rights as theirs. And that to think, like I said, that it's not cake, that if women want their piece, that you will lose some of yours,
Hmm.
right? I think that just to realize that exercise of rights is free and it's unlimited. It's not like there's a limit to it. So I think that just that is something that like it needs a reorientation of the mind, that women can actually be equal with men, and to respect women,
Hmm.
and just let them do what they want to do. I think that the key is respect, right?
Okay, thank you so much, Terai. Maria Thereese Serrano, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you. I know we've never met, but this is the first time that we've seen each other, and I can already tell that we can have longer conversations, maybe soon, and talk about other issues as well, because I know you're very multifaceted. You even know want to talk about food perhaps one of these days, especially when the restrictions have been downgraded. Maybe we can have lunch or coffee somewhere in Dalaget and talk about
That's
food
true.
or
That's
stuff like
true.
that.
That's true. Totally. So thank you again. I'm greatly honored. Greatly honored. And mabuhay mga kababayan sa Sugbo.
Thank you so much, Terai. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Maria Thereese Serrano. Thank you.